New American Standard Bible because I realized that to a great extent it is close to the original manuscripts from which the Bible was translated. And so I find these readings very interesting. And so for our readings tonight, we'll be reading the first 3 chapters of Exodus. And we will also read the oracles of the prophet Haggai. There are actually 2 divisions, there are 2 chapters in the book of Haggai. And this focus on leaders, the choosing of leaders, how God set aside leaders for his own purpose, for his own timing, and how he is engaged in their lives. So we are going to be reminded of the sovereignty of God and how God can use people to preserve those whom he has his hand upon to carry out the work he needs to get done. And when we read in these chapters, Sister Rose, we're going to see how valuable women has been in preserving many of the men that God would have brought about to be his leaders. Amen. So you're ready to journey with me as we read out of Exodus. And I'm reading from the New American Standard Bible. Now these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. They came each one with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Aser. All of the persons who came from the loins of Jacob were 70 in number, but Joseph was already in Egypt. Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation. But the sons of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly and multiplied and became exceedingly mighty, so that the land was filled with them. Now, a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. He said to his people, "Behold, the people of the sons of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal wisely with them, or else they will multiply, and in the event of war, they will also join themselves to those who hate us and fight against us and depart from the land." So they appointed taskmasters over them to afflict them with hard labor. And they built for Pharaoh storage cities, Pithom and Rameses. Let me pause here and ask a question. Looking at the thinking, if Israel is multiplying, if Israel is fruitful and they are increasing greatly across the land, and you deal with them favorably, and there comes a war, whose side would Israel be more likely to support in the event of a war? Wouldn't it be Egypt over against the nation that comes against Egypt, because Egypt would have treated them well? Wouldn't that make sense? So if you treat them bad and a war breaks out, whose side are they going to go on? They go on the other people them side? I'm not sure how would Pharaoh get that type of thinking. Because if you wanted Israel on your side, should in case there is a war, then treat them good. They are growing stronger than Egypt, so make them a part of the building of the nation in a positive way. Treat them well. War comes up, your army is bigger and greater. But you treat them bad, You should have expected that they're going to come against you. So that thinking of Pharaoh had to be of the devil. Couldn't be a wise thinking of God. Verse 12, we continue. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread out, so that they were in dread of the sons of Israel. So hard labor was set upon them. The hard labor intensified. It didn't weaken them. It strengthened them. The Egyptians compelled the sons of Israel to labor rigorously, and they made their lives bitter with hard labor in mortar and bricks and at all kinds of labor in the field, all their labors which they rigorously imposed on them. Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah, and the other was named Puah. And he said, when you are helping the Hebrew women to give birth and see them upon the birth stool, if it is a son, then you shall put him to death. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live. This seems to be another thinking of the devil. Because if you wanted to stop Israel from growing, is it men that you ought to kill or the women? The men can't bear children. So if they have no women to bear children, then there can't be no children. But your thinking is to get rid of the men so they cannot spread. Somehow, they are going to be given to your Egyptian men, and these women are devoted to their Hebrew culture, so they're still going to be Hebrew. They're still going to grow in some ways. Continuing verse 17. But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt had commanded them, but let the boys live. This, Sister Will say, is a clear indication as to when not to obey the government. It's a clear indication as to when not to obey man, not as to when to be disobedient. We have this clear indication here. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said to them, why have you done this thing? And let the boys live. The midwife said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife can get to them. So God was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very mighty, because the midwives feared God. He established households for them. Then Pharaoh commanded all the people, saying, every son who is born you are to cast into the Nile, and every daughter you are to keep alive. Reflect again. The Hebrew women did not obey, midwives did not obey the king because they feared God. But when the king inquired why they did what they have done, instead of saying to Pharaoh, we fear God, we rather obey him than obey you, they simply said that the midwives are not like the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwife could get to them. You got to put that in your head. You see, if I have to be present, if I to be present as a midwife to make sure that all the necessary things that ought to be done for a sterile environment and to receive the child. Who's going to be there to receive the child? The man is not inside here, so who's going to receive the child? Or the child will come out? The child will hurt himself if somebody is not there to receive the child and the child pushed out of the woman. Huh? So they were strong. They give birth before we can allow the child to be stillborn. But that's a wicked act of fear. Because that is not only affecting the child, but it will affect the woman. Because when a child is to be born, the woman have the child born or suffocate in some way and die. So that was Pharaoh's second attempt. Pharaoh's third, they should cause every boy child to drown in the river Nile. We're going to see that Moses was placed in the river Nile rather than tossed in the river Nile. Chapter 2. Now a man from the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. The woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. How many months? Remember, there is a decree. The child is born, throw the child in the Nile. This mother held the beautiful child for 3 months, hid the child from Pharaoh for 3 months. Do you know that if Pharaoh gives such a decree, that Pharaoh is going to have his army going from house to house, checking? So this woman has to be very skilled to hide a baby for 3 months and you don't hear. And when he must cry about, how did you allow somebody to not know that a baby is in the house? 3 months. But when she could hid him no more, no longer, she got him a wicker basket and covered it with tar and pitch. Then she put the child into it and set it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. Just give me a moment here. Let me see if I can go into the Hebrew text. See if I can find one of those Hebrew texts and see what is used for the wicker basket. My study notes is giving me 1 and 2, giving me a reference, telling me that there's something else that is used for wicker and something else that is used for basket. It says wicker basket, and it's 2 Hebrew words lying behind this phrase of the Egyptian origin. The word basket only here and of Noah's ark. So I'm going to share something with you. It actually jumped out at me while I was looking at a commentary on Exodus, and somebody made note of the word